Imagine you're standing in a parking garage in Chongqing at 2 in the morning. The fluorescent lights are flickering, and then something pulls in, and for a second, your brain just stops. Not because it's loud, not because it's flashy in the cheap way, but because it looks like it drove here from a decade you haven't lived yet. The lines are wrong. Wrong in the best possible way. Like someone told an AI to design a car, and then, instead of deleting the file, a team of engineers actually built the thing. That's the AVATR 12. And the story of why you've probably never heard of it is almost as interesting as the car itself. Let's start at the beginning, because this thing has a lineage that most Western automotive journalists are either ignoring or actively afraid to talk about. AVATR is not some random EV startup that materialized out of thin air, with a PowerPoint deck and a dream. It is a joint venture between Changan Automobile, one of China's largest and oldest automakers, Huawei, and CATL. Read those names again slowly. Changan, which has been building cars since the 1950s. Huawei, the most controversial and arguably most technically sophisticated technology company on the planet right now. And CATL, contemporary Amperex technology, the company that literally builds the batteries that go inside your BMW, your Mercedes, your Volkswagen, your Ford. The company whose cells power a significant portion of the electric vehicles sold globally. That CATL. So when AVATR says this car is built on advanced technology, they're not talking about a startup's optimism. They're talking about infrastructure that already underpins the global auto industry. The AVATR 12 is the second major model from this collaboration, and it represents something the brand wanted to do from day one. Build a car that doesn't compete with budget EVs. This is not a price war vehicle. This is not China trying to undercut Tesla with a $25,000 Econobox. The AVATR 12 is a full-size luxury electric sedan. Think the space of a BMW 7 Series, the attitude of a Porsche Taycan, and the technology stack of something that hasn't been released in the West yet. That's the cocktail, and it's intoxicating. Let's talk about how it looks, because this is where things get cinematic. The exterior of the AVATR 12 is what happens when the design brief says, remove everything unnecessary. There's a fastback roofline that slopes with real intention, not the awkward slope you see on some sedans that try to look sporty and end up looking apologetic. This one commits. The greenhouse tapers. The haunches are wide and planted. The front end is dominated by a face that uses what AVATR calls an AVATR wing lighting signature. A thin, continuous strip of light that cuts across the hood and wraps into the headlight clusters. At night, this car does not look like transportation. It looks like a threat. The side profile has an almost coupe-like character while maintaining genuine rear seat headroom, which is an engineering feat that a lot of sporty sedans pretend to achieve but quietly fail at. AVATR apparently cared about both things simultaneously. The result is a silhouette that photographs like it's already moving even when it's standing still. The proportions are helped enormously by the fact that this car rides on what AVATR calls the CHN platform. That stands for Changan, Huawei, NEDA. Though in context, this is the collaborative platform developed with Huawei deeply integrated into every layer. It's a purpose-built EV architecture, which means there's no vestigial transmission tunnel, no compromised wheelbase, no legacy packaging constraint haunting the interior. The floor is flat, the wheelbase is long, the car sits low because the battery is distributed optimally, not shoehorned. Now, the part that changes the conversation. The technology in this car is not a checklist of features. It's a philosophy, and that philosophy is Huawei. Huawei's involvement in AVATR is not cosmetic. They're not just providing the infotainment screen and calling it smart. Huawei has embedded their HarmonyOS operating system at the vehicle level, which means the car's software architecture is genuinely integrated, the way Apple integrated hardware and software in a way that Windows laptops couldn't match for years. The operating system doesn't just run the screen, it manages how the car communicates with your devices, how it handles voice control, how the driver assistance systems perceive and respond to the environment, and how over-the-air updates are deployed and applied. This is not Android Auto bolted onto a Toyota. This is a native, unified ecosystem. The infotainment is centered around a large, portrait-oriented screen, elegantly framed, not mounted like an afterthought, and there's a secondary screen in the rear, Because AVATR understands that the person sitting in the back seat might actually matter. The UI is fast, genuinely fast. Huawei has invested in chipsets specifically for automotive applications, and the latency you get in this car is not the laggy touch experience that plagued early EV competitors. Touching this screen feels like touching a flagship smartphone, because functionally, it's built on the same architecture. The driver assistance system is called Huawei ADS, Advanced Driving System. In its more capable configurations, this system uses a combination of LiDAR, millimeter wave radar, and cameras to build a real-time model of the environment around the car. Not just a basic lane keep assist and adaptive cruise control situation. We're talking about a system that handles complex urban scenarios, merging, roundabouts, navigating construction zones, with a level of confidence that systems from brands charging twice as much are still fumbling toward. In China, this system has accumulated serious real-world mileage. It has been tested in rain, in snow, in the genuinely chaotic density of Chinese urban traffic, which is frankly a more demanding proving ground than most Western highways. Now let's talk about what this car does when you press the accelerator. The AVATR 12 is offered in multiple configurations, but the dual-motor all-wheel drive variant is the one that makes people religious. Combined output figures put this car in the range of serious performance. We're talking sub-4 second 0 to 100 km/h territory on a car this size, with a full luxury interior on a platform that wasn't designed as a track weapon, but absolutely does not apologize when you ask it to move. The sensation of instant torque delivery on an EV of this power level is something that never gets old, no matter how many times automotive journalists try to describe it. But what makes the AVATR 12 different is that the power feels managed. It doesn't feel like the car is barely restraining itself and might eat you alive. It feels like a very serious, very confident machine that has chosen to go fast right now. That's a different emotion. It's authority, not aggression. The battery, built by CATL because of course it is, provides a range that puts real-world anxiety at a distance. Depending on configuration, figures for this platform push well past 400 kilometers on Chinese CLTC ratings. Convert that realistically to WLTP or EPA cycles, and you lose some of that number, but you're still looking at a vehicle that, in normal daily use, is not going to strand you. The charging architecture supports rapid DC fast charging, and the car's thermal management, again, not an afterthought here, is designed to maintain charging performance and battery health across a range of temperatures. CATL's chemistry is among the most mature in the industry. This is not experimental. This is the same underlying technology trusted by the premium European brands that customers in North America pay serious premiums for. Let's step inside, because this is where the AVATR 12 transforms from impressive to genuinely unsettling. The interior design language is what happens when a brand decides that minimalism is not a budget constraint, but an actual aesthetic choice. The dashboard is clean, not empty, clean. There's real material quality here, soft surfaces where your hands and eyes land, not hard plastics hiding behind dark color choices. The seats are wide, supportive, and finished in materials that feel considered. The ambient lighting, which is increasingly a battleground in luxury EVs, is handled tastefully, meaning it adds atmosphere without making the cabin feel like a nightclub at 3 p.m. The rear seat is the part that stops conversations, because the AVATR 12, with its long wheelbase, gives rear occupants space that a lot of full-size executive sedans would be embarrassed by. There's a recline function, there's the secondary screen, there's climate control that isn't an afterthought zone with 2 basic settings. Someone sat in the back seat of this car during development and said, "This person matters." And you feel that. The acoustic engineering deserves mention because it's become a differentiator in the EV space, and AVATR apparently studied it seriously. Road noise suppression in the AVATR 12 is at a level that reframes what you expect from an EV cabin. The lack of engine noise, which you'd expect, is complemented by genuine wind noise management and low road intrusion. Sitting in this car at highway speed, the silence is not the absence of effort, is the result of it. Now let's position this car in the Western competitive context, because that's where it gets emotionally complicated. A Porsche Taycan at base level will relieve you of somewhere north of $100,000 Canadian. A BMW i7, if you want real luxury EV sedan experience, is well over $150,000. A Mercedes EQS is in the same territory, and despite all of that German heritage and brand prestige, both the i7 and EQS have received sustained criticism for infotainment systems that don't match the price tag, driving range that underperforms expectations, and interiors that hedge between traditional luxury and EV-era design without fully committing to either. The Tesla Model S remains a legitimate performance story, but the interior quality never quite matched what the performance numbers implied, and the fit and finish questions have not gone away. The AVATR 12 walks into this room and doesn't apologize for not paying Western prices for Western brand recognition, brings a technology stack that is arguably more current than what BMW and Mercedes are deploying right now, brings battery technology from the company that supplies BMW and Mercedes, and it brings a design language that doesn't look derivative of anything on the road in North America today. The price in China, and this is where the conversation gets delicate, is a fraction of what comparable Western luxury EVs command. That price gap is enormous. It is the kind of gap that when Western automotive executives see it, they go quiet because they know what it means for the future if these cars reach Western markets at scale. In the United States, that future is currently blocked. The current tariff and regulatory environment around Chinese manufactured vehicles has essentially created a wall. The combination of Section 301 tariffs, which on Chinese EVs have been pushed to levels that make the economics of importation non-viable, and the political temperature around Chinese technology companies, specifically Huawei, means that the AVATR 12 in the American market is not just commercially complicated. It is effectively, practically, politically impossible right now. American buyers who want this car are looking at a locked door, but north of the border, the door is open. Canada operates under a different regulatory framework. The 15-year import rule, which allows vehicles to be imported once they are at least 15 years old, is the pathway most people know. But that's not the whole story for newer vehicles. Canadian import regulations have pathways that, under specific compliance processes, allow for the importation and registration of vehicles not officially sold in Canada, provided they can be demonstrated to meet Canadian safety standards. This is not theoretical. Enthusiasts and gray market importers have been using these pathways for years, bringing in Japanese domestic market vehicles, European spec cars, and increasingly, Chinese EVs. North of the border, people are already bringing these in, not in showroom quantities, not with manufacturer warranty support, but legally, with the paperwork, with the compliance filings, with the knowledge of what the process requires. Canadian buyers can legally get one. You can register it up there. The community of importers who specialize in this space, and that community is growing fast, understands how to navigate Transport Canada's admissibility requirements, how to handle the compliance documentation, and how to get a car like the AVATR 12 onto Canadian roads. What that means practically is that a buyer in Vancouver, in Calgary, in Toronto, who has the appetite for this car and the patience for an import process is not staring at the same locked door as the American buyer. They're staring at a door with a specific combination lock, and the combination is learnable. For a car this capable, at this price relative to Western alternatives, some people are absolutely learning the combination. There's something philosophically interesting about the position this car occupies in the current geopolitical moment. Huawei is the boogeyman of American technology policy. CATL is currently the subject of discussions about domestic battery manufacturing pressure in the West. Changan is a state-affiliated enterprise operating in a country that the current U.S. political posture treats with significant suspicion. And yet, the car that these three entities built together is, by any honest technical assessment, extraordinary. The technology is real. The execution is real. The driving experience is real. The geopolitics and the engineering have arrived at completely different conclusions, and watching those two realities collide in the conversation around vehicles like the AVATR 12 is one of the more fascinating tensions in the global automotive industry right now. The question of whether Huawei's software integration represents a security concern, the argument that drives the U.S. restriction posture, is a legitimate conversation. But it is a conversation happening in Washington and Brussels and Ottawa, not in the parking garage at 2 a.m., where someone just encountered this car for the first time and felt that brain stop moment. Those two conversations are occurring in parallel, and they may never fully reconcile. Policy is policy, but the car is the car, and the car is something. Think about what's actually happening in the Chinese EV market right now. Not the narrative that it's all cheap subcompacts undercutting on price. The narrative has changed. BYDs, Han and Seal are legitimate vehicles that have earned respect from European journalists who drove them without prior bias. The Li Auto L9 and L8 have shown that Chinese brands can do premium family transport at a level that Land Rover and Volvo need to take seriously. NIO's ET9 is a near six-figure halo car that uses battery swap technology as a differentiator in a way that no Western brand has matched. An AVATR, sitting at the intersection of these forces, represents what happens when a country's entire manufacturing and technology ecosystem decides that mediocrity is no longer acceptable, that the benchmark is excellence, not adequacy. The AVATR 12 is a product of that decision. It is also a product of a specific moment in automotive history, a window that may close. As Western governments react to Chinese automotive competitiveness with tariffs and regulatory pressure, as trade tensions escalate, as domestic content requirements get stricter in Canada and the EU and the US, the accessibility of vehicles like this may not improve. It may shrink. The gray market pathway that currently exists for Canadian buyers is not guaranteed to remain as navigable as it is today. Policy changes. Import regulations evolve. The window for getting your hands on something like the AVATR 12, without fighting a decade of regulatory buildup against you, may actually be narrower in 3 years than it is right now. That's not fear-mongering. That's pattern recognition. Watch what's happening in Europe, where the EU has applied significant additional tariffs on Chinese EVs. Watch what's happening in Canada, where the federal government has announced its own tariff measures on Chinese-manufactured EVs, measures that are already affecting cost calculations for importers. The window is not closed, but it's not wide open either, and it's not moving in the direction of wider. For the buyer who sees the AVATR 12 for what it is, a genuinely world-class luxury EV from a collaboration between 3 entities that represent the current state of the art in their respective domains, the calculation is time-sensitive. This is the part of the story where the forbidden fruit metaphor earns its keep. The fruit exists, you can reach it from certain positions. The question is, how long the branch stays where it is? Here's what strikes me most about this entire situation, stepping back from the specifications and the geopolitics for a moment. The Western automotive industry spent the better part of a century being the global standard of excellence. Detroit, Stuttgart, Tokyo, these were the benchmarks. China was the market you sold into, not the competitor you worried about. That era is ending, and the AVATR 12 is one of the most articulate statements of that ending that currently exists. Not because it's the most expensive Chinese EV, or the fastest, or the one with the most features, but because it is genuinely balanced. It gets the design right, it gets the technology right, it gets the interior right, it gets the performance right. It doesn't win on one dimension while failing on 3 others. It's a complete car, a complete vision, from a collaboration that 5 years ago, most Western automotive analysts would have dismissed as aspirational noise. It is not noise. The AVATR 12 is a message. It's a message about where capability lives now. It's a message about what a technology-first approach to vehicle development actually produces when executed without compromise. And for the people north of the border who are quietly figuring out how to get one registered, the ones doing the research, running the numbers, calling the importers, understanding the compliance process, those people got the message early. The rest of the world is still reading it,